We are going to have a look at missing angles. When we are asked to find a missing angle, we first need to see where that missing angle is. So if we have a look at this example, if we have got 158 degrees and then we've got x, or it could just be a blank and they tell you to fill in the missing angles. So we obviously then need to find what x is, the value of x. And because 158 and x lie on a straight line, we know that the sum of 158 and x will have to give us 180. And that's because we know that the angles on a straight line should add up to 180 degrees. So the sum of all the angles on a straight line gives us 180 degrees. So because we've got 158, that's what we know that is the angle that we have, we need to work with 158 and our 180, and that will help us find what x is. So 180, if I minus 158 from 180, I will find what my x is. So if we work that out, we will find that x is equal to 22 degrees. So x there is equal to 22 degrees. If we have a look at another example, also on a straight line, except if we have got more than two angles on that line. Let's say we've got 71 there, we've got 62 degrees there, and just remember that this isn't drawn accurately. And then we've got B there. So if we need to find what the value of B is, what we need to do is say that 62 degrees plus B plus 71 will again give us an answer of 180. So if we first plus 62 and 71, we do that on the side, 62 and 71. 2 plus 1 is 3. 6 plus 7 is 13. So we end up with 133 plus B gives us 180. And now all we need to do to find what B is we take this 133 over to the other side. We minus it from both sides. So we minus 133 from this side and we minus 133 from this side. So we end up with B is equal to 180 minus 133. Right, so if we work that out, we again need to do that on the side. So let's do that over here. 180 minus 133, just to be certain, we do it on the side. Borrow from our 8 to get 7. 10 minus 3 is 7. 7 minus 3 is 4. And we've got 0. So we end up with 47 degrees. So 62 plus 47 plus 71 gives us 180 degrees. So our B is equal to 47 degrees. Right, let's have a look at one more example. If we have been given a right angle on a straight line, and then we've got two other angles, one of which is 17 degrees, and the other one we are not sure of, we obviously need to find what x is. What we need to do here is remember that a right angle is equal to 90 degrees, so we can fill that 90 degrees in. And then we've got 90 degrees plus 17 degrees, so 90 plus 17 plus x again equals 180 because we are working with angles on a straight line. So 90 plus 17 will give us 107. 107 plus x gives me 180. So what do I end up with? 180 minus 107. So we could probably do that in our heads, but let's just make sure. 107. So we borrow from our 8 to get 7, and we end up with 3, 7, and 0 there. So we end up with 73. So x equals 180 minus 107, which is equal to 73 degrees. So our x there is equal to 73 degrees. When we are trying to find missing angles in triangles, we again need to remember that the sum of all the angles in any triangle is 180 degrees. So if we have a look here at this first triangle, we have been given 87 degrees, 39 degrees, and x. So we need to find what the value of x is. That is our missing angle there. So we know that 87 plus 39 plus x will give us an answer of 180 degrees. So 87 plus 39, we can work that out. 7 plus 9 is 16. 8 plus 3 is 11, plus 1 is 12. So we end up with 126 plus x, because we did those two first, plus x gives us an answer of 180. So if we work out then what 180 minus 126 is, we will find our x. So 0 minus 6 we can't do, so we borrow from our 8. We get 4. 7 minus 2 is 5. And we've got nothing there. So x there equals 54 degrees. So the value of this angle there is 54 degrees. Right, let's have a look at this second triangle here. We have a right-angled triangle because we can see that there is a right angle there, which we know is 90 degrees. So we can put in our 90 degrees. We are then working with 90 degrees and 30 degrees. And we need to find what the value of that y is. We need to find what that angle is equal to. So again, we've got 90 degrees plus 30 degrees plus our y is equal to 180. And we have got 90 plus 30 is 120. 120 plus y is equal to 180. So in order to find what y is equal to, we say 180 minus 120, which gives us an answer of 60 or 60 degrees. So our y is equal to 60 degrees. Let's have a look at this third triangle here. We need to try and recognize what type of triangle this is. And because of these lines here, that indicates that we have got an isosceles triangle. And remember that if these angles here are equal, if these sides are equal here, then these two angles, these base angles, will also be equal. So those are some of the properties of our isosceles triangle, which we now need to remember when we are working with missing angles within an isosceles triangle. So if these two angles A and B are equal, then it makes things a little bit easier because we only need to find what one of them is equal to, and then the other one will obviously be the same. So we have got 42 degrees. That's what we have been given. And we can almost just say plus A. And that is because A is equal to B. So B is equal to A and A is equal to B. So we can just work with one of those angles for now. And that the sum of those three angles equals 180 degrees. So 42 plus A is equal to 180 degrees. What we can say is 42 plus 2A, because we've got two of those angles there, is equal to 180 degrees. So 42 plus 2A is 180 degrees. We now need to find what 180 minus 42 will give us in order to work out our 2A. So 180 minus, put in our placeholder, and 42. And we borrow from our 8 to get 7. We got 8 there. 7 minus 4 is 3. And then we've got 1. So we've got that 2a is equal to 138 degrees. And therefore, we just need to divide both sides by 2 in order to find what a is equal to. So 138 divided by 2, you can again do that on the side, and that will give you your answer, which is 69 degrees. So if this confuses you here, if working with a plus a confuses you, you can just work with a plus b. And then here, with 42 plus 2a, what you can also work with there is, say, 42 degrees plus a plus b. You can just work with that. And then again, when you say 180 minus 42, you can say that that is equal to a plus b. And because you know that a and b are equal to each other, then you should understand that that just means that you need to divide 138 by 2, because these two angles will be the same. So your a equals your b, and your a equals b, which equals 69 degrees. So each of these angles here are equal to each other, these base angles, and they are equal to 69 degrees there and 69 degrees there. When we are working with missing angles inside quadrilaterals, we need to remember that the sum of all the angles in a quadrilateral is equal to 360 degrees. So if we have a look at this first quadrilateral, this is a parallelogram. So we need to remember the properties of our parallelogram, which are that opposite angles are equal. So we have already found, so we need to solve for x, y, and z. We have already immediately solved for z because we know that these two angles are opposite angles, and in a parallelogram, opposite angles are equal. So z is equal to 115 degrees. We know that x and y are also going to be equal, but in order to find what they are equal to, we need to remember that the sum of all four angles in any quadrilateral is equal to 360 degrees. And we know that the other two angles are equal to 115 degrees. So if we add these two angles together, we get 115 plus 115, which is equal to 230 degrees. So if we minus 230 degrees from our 360, we will find what the sum of x and y is equal to. So 0 minus 0 is 0, 6 minus 3 is 3, 3 minus 2 is 1, so we end up with 130 degrees. 130 degrees is the sum, so x plus y is equal to 130 degrees. Therefore, x and y separately are going to be equal to 130 divided by 2. And 130 divided by 2 is equal to 65 degrees. So x is equal to 65 degrees and y is equal to 65 degrees. And if we work it out again, we could say 115 plus 65 plus 115 plus 65, and we will get an answer of 360 degrees. Right, if we have a look here at this trapezium, again, a trapezium is a quadrilateral, so the sum of all four angles is going to be equal to 360 degrees. So we've got 102 degrees plus 127 degrees plus 53 degrees plus E, and that will be equal to 360 degrees. So in order to find our E, which is our missing angle over there, we need to sum these three other angles together. So we've got 102, we've got 127, and we've got 53. So 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 2 is 12. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8, and 2. So the sum of these three angles that we've been given is 282. And what we need to do now is find what the value of E is equal to. And how we do that is we say 360 minus 282. And we end up with 10 minus 2 is 8. 5 minus 8 we can't do, so again we borrow. And we end up with 15 minus 8 is 7. 2 minus 2 is 0. So we end up with E is equal to 78 degrees. And if we plug that 78 degrees in there, we can then check. We can say 102 plus 127 plus 53 plus 78, and that will give us an answer of 360 degrees. Right, if we have a look here at this kite, we will see that, again, a kite is a quadrilateral because it has 4 straight sides. And we need to now remember the properties of our kites. And that is that these two opposite angles are equal to each other. So we end up with 28 degrees plus 12 degrees plus A plus B, and that will give us an answer of 360 degrees again. So we first add our 28 and our 12 degrees, and that will give us an answer of 40 degrees. So 40 degrees plus A plus B equals 360 degrees. And in order to find what A plus B is equal to, A plus B will be equal to 360 minus 40. And 360 degrees minus 40 will give us an answer of 320 degrees. And then obviously because A and B are equal to each other, we just need to divide this amount by 2, and we end up with 160 degrees. So A is equal to B, which is equal to 160 degrees. So each of these angles here will be 160 degrees. And what we can do is say 160 degrees plus 160 degrees plus 28 degrees plus 12 degrees, and we will end up with an answer of 360 degrees. When we are working with parallel lines, there are certain rules that we need to remember, and we need to go back to our fun rule to help us remember these rules. So when we are able to pick up an F pattern, a pattern that looks like an F, when these lines are parallel to each other, then these angles will be equal to each other. So that's for your F. With your U, these lines need to be parallel to each other, and when those lines are parallel to each other, this angle and this angle will be equal to 180 degrees. So that these angles are not equal to each other unless they are both 90-degree angles, unless they are both right angles. So the sum of those two angles will be 180 degrees when these two sides or lines are parallel. And that's your U or your C shape. Then we have a look at our N or our Z shape. When these two sides or lines are parallel, we have these two angles that are equal to each other. So your F is called, these two angles are called corresponding angles. with your U or your C, these two angles are called co-interior angles, and with your N, these angles are called alternate angles. So if we have a look at this pattern and these few lines here, we will see that these two lines are parallel to each other, and we've got one line intersecting them over there, and we have been given that this angle here is 125 degrees. So if that angle is 125 degrees, we will be able to work with just that one angle in order to find all the other angles here, 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 and here. Right, so in order to do that, let's try and see if we can find any of these patterns using our parallel lines. So we can see that there is an F there. So there's our F, which means that this angle and this angle will be equal to each other. So this angle here is equal to 125 degrees. Right. And then when we remember that angles on a straight line are to 180 degrees, what we need 125 minus, or rather 180 minus 125 in order to find what that angle is equal to. So 180 minus 125, we borrow from our 8 and we end up with 5, 5 and 0. So this angle over here will be equal to 55 degrees. And as you can see, so 125 and 55 lie on a straight line, and so do 125 and this angle. So this angle here will also be 55 degrees, and we could also have worked that angle out by remembering that vertically opposite angles are equal. So this angle here and this angle here were vertically opposite angles, or are vertically opposite angles, and vertically opposite angles are equal, so they are both equal to 55 degrees, or you could have used angles on a straight line to work that out. Right, so let's use vertically opposite angles. We've got a straight line there intersecting with a straight line there, which means that 125 there and this angle here are vertically opposite angles, which means that this angle here is equal to 125 degrees as well. Let's see if we can find alternate angles. So we're looking for the N or the Z. So we can see a Z shape over there, and that means that this angle here and this angle here are equal to each other. So because that angle is 55, we will end up with 55 degrees there as well. What we can then check is for our U or our C. So we can find a backwards C or a sideways U over there, which means that this angle here and this angle here will add up to 180 degrees. So that means that 55 degrees plus this angle, it will give us 180 degrees. So we have already worked with those numbers there. So we know that this angle here will be equal to 125 degrees. Right, so this is the angle that we are left with. And there are many ways that we can work this out. We could work it out using a backwards F to say that this angle and this angle are equal. We could use a vertically opposite angle saying that angle and that angle is equal. Or we could use angles on a straight line saying that 125 plus this angle will give us 180 degrees. So this angle, whichever way you work it out, will be 55 degrees, because with this backwards F, this angle will be equal to that angle, which is 55 degrees. the 55 degrees here is vertically opposite this angle here, so that would also be 55, and 180 minus 125 gives me 55 degrees. So whichever way you work it out, you will end up with 55 degrees. We are now going to use our parallel lines to work out our parallel lines and our fun angles to find these missing angles. Right, so we just need to remind ourselves that our F are our corresponding angles. So if those two lines are parallel, these two angles will be equal, and those two angles are called corresponding angles. If these two lines are parallel, then the sum of these two angles will be 180 degrees. And if these two lines are parallel, these two angles will be equal. So the N or the Z, those angles are called alternate angles. These angles are called co-interior angles, and these angles are called corresponding angles. So let's see what we can now pick up in this image. So we have got 133 and we have got 52 degrees there. So we now need to work with what we have been given. So we know that 133 and this angle here are lying on a straight line. They are angles on a straight line. So if we say 180 degrees minus 133 degrees, we will end up with this angle here. So we need to borrow from our 7, and we end up with 7. 7 minus 3 is 4. And we've got 0 there. So this angle here is 47 degrees, and we have got 52 degrees there. So we've only got one angle missing from our triangle. So if we add 52, 47, and this angle here, we should get 180 degrees. So 52 plus 47, 52 plus 47 is 99. So if we then say the sum of all the angles in a triangle is equal to 180 degrees, we know that the sum of two of those angles is 99. So we minus that 99 from 180. And we end up with 81 degrees. So this angle here is 81 degrees. And what we have here is 3 angles on a straight line. So these 3 angles here, 1, 2, 3, have to add up to 180 degrees because they all lie on a straight line. So what we need to do here is first try and figure out what one of these other angles will be equal to. So what we can do is work with our parallel lines, and we can try and see that there is an F over there. It's lying flat on its back and facing upwards, and that means that this angle here and this angle here are equal to each other. So this angle will be 47 degrees, just like this angle there. So we have therefore got 81 degrees there, 47 degrees there, and we just need to find what that angle is equal to. So 81 degrees plus 47 degrees plus our question mark there will give us 180 degrees. So let's add 81 and 47. And that gives us an answer of 128. So 180 minus 128 will give us an answer of 52. So our question mark there is equal to 52 degrees. And how else could we have found that 52 degrees? We could have seen, using our parallel lines, we could have seen a Z or an N there, which means that these two angles here are equal because they are alternate angles. And as you can see, they are both equal to 52 degrees. What we could also try and figure out is where else we could have worked out our different angles using our fun angles and see whether or not they would still add up to the same amounts. So there are different ways of working out all these different angles, and all we need to do is figure out which way suits us better and which way we prefer.